Alrighty, I think I'm live. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Stacey Storino. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, the number one place for anybody who loves Marvel and loves to do a deep dive. And this is an attorney reacts video, so you're going to get an additional attorney perspective because I'm a mother and an attorney by day, and then I typically try to record my pre-edited videos at night. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do. I love to take suggestions and recommendations from my community members, and then I give you a shout out if I, take your idea and run with it in a video. So if that's attractive to you, that's cool. And so here we go. I just did my first viewing of She-Hulk episode 3. This episode, first of all, spoilers. I may as well throw that out there now. Spoilers for anything Hulk related. Okay, so hopefully, ideally, you've seen at least the first 2 episodes and a bunch of the trailers too. If you have, that's cool. If not, just know going forward, spoiler alert. So this third episode is entitled The People versus Emil Blonsky. So a lot of this episode does revolve around his hearing. Of course, he was incarcerated as, a criminal. He's an incarcerated superhuman, I suppose. And as is typical, I'm not a criminal attorney. I'm only admitted in New York. This is going on in California. In the Marvel comic book saga, the firm that She-Hulk worked for, Goodman, Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway, they did have offices in both New York and in California. Hey, Second Street Marvel, what's going on? I didn't get to watch yet, but I'm still here lurking. Oh, thank you for coming to see. And by the way, I am going to mention, I put in my notes that I was going to run with one of the recommendations this week that you had made to me previously, talking about, how Marvel is embracing feminism more, and I was definitely going to give you a shout out to that because some of the Easter eggs here are priceless. And some of the stuff that you see on screen when we go to the Marvel Cinematic Universe's version of YouTube, it's just priceless. The comments on the MCU's version of Twitter shows, their Twitter, whatever it's called, trolls, the MCU version of Twitter's trolls, because they're totally trolling on all the attention that female superhumans are getting. And they feel like it's unfair. And where are all the men folk at? So I think that the all-female run crew that produced and put out She-Hulk Attorney at Law, they had already seen all sorts of backlash going on as far back as Captain Marvel and crew coming forward, and so they kind of predicted and presaged where everything was going to go with at least a portion of the general population. They nailed it so well, you would have thought they were Nostradamus. So I'm really, really proud of that. Hey, Rami, what's going on? Hey, Mama Hulk, what's going on? I know, look at my She-Hulk attorney. It's hard with the packaging. I, of course, will not take her out of the package, but this is a limited edition She-Hulk attorney figurine. And my husband got that for me because we've been married quite a long time at this point. We recently had our 15th wedding anniversary, and what a trooper I was. I was out in the hallway of the hotel doing last week's reaction, and it's already a week. But we were talking about what kind of superhero he thought I would be. This is a couple decades ago. And he was like, oh, totally She-Hulk. You're a She-Hulk. So I can't even tell you how tickled pink I am. I suppose tickled green that this has come out. So definitely Second Street Marvel, you were in my notes to mention. So I'm going to get to you in a few if you're still here. But I would love to give you props for that recommendation. It was something I kept meaning to get to. And then there's no way, once you see this episode, you're going to know why I did it. We might even want to kind of collab or something because I think it's just so perfect. But Second Street Marvel kind of called this a little bit beforehand. So I want to give him credit. So She-Hulk represents Emil Blonsky as the Abomination, but the parole hearing doesn't go exactly as planned. No, but I love how Jennifer rolled with it because any litigator, I'm a civil litigator in New York, not a criminal / civil litigator in California. But I promise you now, what she did, any litigator has to be at least kind of good with if stuff goes sideways or unexpected stuff comes out, whether it comes from your own client or the non-party witnesses that you call in, the character witnesses, we actually see both a trial in their civil court and that Anthony Pugliese does, or Pug. So we see him. And Jennifer goes to testify on behalf, kinda, of Dennis Bukowski, who is also from, these are all characters from the Marvel comic book saga, okay? So, Nikki, not so much directly, but Jennifer was friendly with her paralegals and staff in the comic book saga. But anyway, you see how stuff goes sideways and how both Pug and Jennifer do what any good litigator needs to do, which is think on your feet and either pull something off immediately in the flow of things like Jennifer does during the parole board hearing, or with the case of like a trial, you can ask for a recess, you can get additional time. A parole board hearing, not typically so much as I understand it, but Pug ends up getting something as his case goes sideways and he's like, wait, and he asks for a recess, they reconvene, and he brings Jennifer in. So we'll get to that in a minute, but I actually love the attention to detail that She-Hulk attorney at law has, how they're layering over the practice of law, like in a very legit way, into a show that's also about superhumans and is supposed to be a comedy. I know Ally McBeal and stuff from the 90s. If you're younger, you won't have likely seen that show or the reruns, but I kind of like this better because Ally McBeal only had to pull off two things, trying to show the personal life of Ally McBeal and then superimposing her practice of law on top of it. This show has to go all three-dimensional because it has to show Jennifer's struggles on her own as a human, as a superhuman, and then as a lawyer. So they're pulling off a much bigger feat here. Oh, hey, Alonzo, is it bad that I really was waiting for your assessment? No, because I think I'm the only Marvel theorist out there who is an actual attorney, too. I love, the other big influencers like Emergency Awesome and New Rock Stars and, of course, Screen Crush with Ryan Airy. Ryan Airy was a school teacher, I believe, but in his past life, I'm not sure about everybody else. But I'm an attorney and I still have an active license to practice law. I'm not admitted in California, but still, California and New York have a lot of similarities. You can also pull into federal court depending upon the circumstances. That didn't come into play here, but I'm going to be curious to see if they do that, if they layer in additional complexities. Sorry about my hair there. Going forward, I know that they're going to dip into cosmic law. And if you don't understand why I think that, guys, whether you're subscribed to my channel, and if not, please subscribe, or not. One of my past videos was like attorney reacts to GLK and H commercial, and I talk about the deep dive Easter egg in there that totally shows that Marvel's going to go cosmic with She-Hulk. Whether they do a season 2 of She-Hulk, which my research has shown they're open to. They're going to see how this first season performs, of course. Only Loki, I believe, was signed on for multiple seasons, like 2-3 seasons up front. But they are open to seeing how She-Hulk performs, and they might do another series or another season of it, I should say. But she's definitely going to be an Avenger, and she's definitely going to be woven more into the fabric of what goes on in the MCU overall, regardless. Especially with Hulk being taken off to what we're pretty sure is going to be Sakaar, and I guess they're going to be working in World War Hulk and all of that. And we're probably going to see his son Scar pop up. All the other Marvel theorists were in a lather about that, but I was kind of waiting to see about the hearing, so I'm so excited with what they did here. So we start off at the Supermax prison that the DODC, or the Department of Damage Control, runs on behalf of the government. Jennifer is in human form because, as you know from watching episode 2, they require that of her. And Emil, her client, descends down in his prison. He's in human form too. She's got to deal with what happened from the news getting the leak that, Emil allegedly escaped prison. If you watch Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings movie, and spoilers if you didn't, sorry if you didn't, there was that scene where Wong was in the fight club that Sean's sister was running, and he and the Abomination were going at it, and it seemed like they were in cahoots with one another. So I do want to bring up that point. And if you've seen that scene in the Shang-Chi movie, let me know what you think down below too. Of course, let me know what you think in the comments down below anyway, live and on the replay. But I'm thinking that Wong was kind of selling the parole board and Jennifer a bit more of a bill of goods. And I can't wait to see how that plays out, because in the end credits, they totally gave you a wink and a nod to where the Abomination's character is aligning. Is he as reformed as they say he is? Alonzo Baylor says, I think we will get a great scene that shows the Marvel Lawyers show, which I can't wait to see that side, that Jen is the attorney for the superheroes villains, but you got Matt Murdock is going to be great. You know it. Seeing this, I can't wait to see what they do in Daredevil Born Again. I know. And what is that? 19 episodes. So they are really hardcore committing to Daredevil, which I'm not surprised about or critical of, but that's like the biggest Marvel Studios commitment to a Disney Plus series ever. So, wow, you're right. And I know Matt Murdock's going to come in another episode or two, and you're going to see them both in court and then outside of court. Can't wait to see how the dynamics of that play out, because in the Marvel comic book saga, they were friends. And he even ended up giving her some personal advice. And I love how in the Marvel comic book saga, if you guys don't know, they both were in a criminal hearing where she represented the interests of Captain America, the original version of him, the Steve Rogers version of him. He's gone elderly. The superhero serum, or the super serum, is wearing down on him. And he's being sued for something that happened to him before he became Captain America, where his actions over in Germany led to the death, it was argued, of an innocent man. And so Jennifer Walters / She-Hulk had to represent him there. And Matt Murdock was doing work on behalf of the people of the state and trying to get him, found guilty, being an accomplice to that individual's murder. And it was very delicate how they handled that. I believe that was during the Dan Slott run of the comics. Because that to me was like the highest and best time for She-Hulk as a character that was more fully fleshed out, and we really looked at what she did for a living, and we got more of an intelligent deep dive, not only about how she could do her work in the States, but eventually when she went off to do work as part of the Magistrati, and she did cosmic law, and what she did with Eros in the comic book saga bled over into what she had to do with the Magistrati and the Living Tribunal. And she was like, I'm not sure I should be in that case, but they dragged her into the case, and it probably worked out all for the best. Alonzo says, can I say that I hate that people are saying that they're not liking the way Marvel is being sexualized, but yet this is where Jen makes it work. Wow. I was typing and what you were saying, the character of Jen. That's dope. Thank you. Yes. And they do a bit of a deeper dive into it with some of the, I don't know that I would call these Easter eggs. We'll get to them in a minute. You'll see how they really are winking and nodding at the trolls that they knew were going to come out of the woodwork and complain about whether you put it as a sexualization of the characters, or, are they going too feminist, or, channeling Rush Limbaugh from decades ago? Are they being feminazis? What's going on? Are they being like too much? Should we go back to focusing more on men? No, I think that this is Marvel counterbalancing for a bit. And then I think as we get more into getting into teams again, you're going to see more of a well-balanced, recalibrated mix of the sexes. And as they get into the New Mutants and or the Young Avengers, I think you will increasingly see folks, no matter how they identify and whatever their persuasion is, we're going to get slowly but surely an interwoven, more broad mix of what they focus on, who they focus on, and how much screen time they give to it. But She-Hulk, no matter what, you were going to be focusing on a female character. The same thing as Miss Marvel. So some of the troll hate that you're getting for that, I'm like, what did you want them to do? I'm sorry. So if you saw Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings, let me know down below if, as we cover Wong's non-party witness testimony on behalf of the Abomination or Emil Blonsky at the parole hearing. I don't know. It seemed like they were buddy buddy, and that they were going to be doing this sort of like cage match thing a bunch of times after that, and may have done it beforehand. I think Wong kind of came in and protected his interest in having a good Fight Club partner, and wanted to make it easier on him. If the guy's out on parole, he could sneak him in and out of different fight clubs, not just the one run by Shang-Chi's sister. And this thing, of course, happens in real life. You get testimony from witnesses and non-party witnesses where they don't give you the full dope. You know what I mean? They don't give you the full Monty. So, of course, Jen goes off to the Supermax prison to confront her client. She's got to, about the cage fight with Wong that broke loose on the news. And she's like, you want to explain to me about breaking out of prison? You said to my face that you didn't turn into the Abomination anymore. This is where we start to, with his response, you're like, oh, he may not be this totally poisonous, horrible villain anymore. But, you could definitely see how they're kind of making him more of a gray area kind of character. Episode 2, they gave a good sympathetic backdrop to put Emil against. And I get it. But here, he's starting to nuance and finesse with her. No, I said I chose not to turn into the Abomination anymore. Clients do this sort of stuff all the time. The only time that it's really easy, I've found as an attorney, or even non-party witnesses do this, and of course opposing parties can do this too. The only time it's easy to nail somebody's feet to the floor is when you have a transcript from a deposition or an examination under an oath, or an EUO, they call it. A 90H hearing if you're dealing with municipal hearings that go on pre-suit in New York anyway. So people do this all the time. Witnesses do this all the time. Clients do this all the time. So Emil goes on to defend himself and says, these were extenuating circumstances. So Jennifer rightly says, do you understand that this constitutes another crime separately with your prison escape and totally destroys your chances of parole? Emil says that he was forced to leave his cell, but that he returned of his own free will. So Jennifer's like, if you remember from episode 2, where they did this whole Silence of the Lambs, and there's like 4 different layers of security and everything. So Jennifer's like, who forced you to escape this insanely high security prison somehow undetected? And so that's where Emil identifies Wong, a sorcerer supreme of the mystic arts. His name is Wong. So the next scene, Nikki's in Jennifer's office. As any good paralegal would, she's done a bunch of background research on him. And she said that she reached out to Wong. She jokes around that she did like a thirst trap to get his attention, to get him to respond to her. Now, one thing I haven't said on this channel before, but I'll say it now. I was a paralegal for 6 years, and I went to law school for 4 years at night, the last 4 of those 6 years. Back then, we didn't have social media like we had today. I will admit that one time we had a witness, and it was our own client. We were doing insurance defense work, and the client just wouldn't show up to testify. So plaintiff exchanged all their discovery. We did the deposition of the plaintiff. This was a physical injury case, so we got them over to IMEs, or independent medical examination. But, now it's like the plaintiff justifiably wanted to depose our client, and he wasn't showing up. And I was asked to call the gentleman because it had been nothing but menfolk trying to get this guy. And he was a construction worker. He was a general contractor at a construction site. And so I guess I kind of thirst trapped him because I was like, hey, big boy, this is Stacy. I gave my maiden name at the time. And I was like, my office would really love it. I pretended I had the IQ of a snow pea. I'm sure that helped. And I was like, we'd really love it if you just showed up for this like deposition thingy, and I'd be happy to meet you. Yeah, he showed up and got deposed. And I was like, I have a boyfriend, drop dead. And not that he deserved it, but we got him out of the whole thing. So anyway, what's really funny is if you worked in the legal community, whether you're as a female paralegal or a female lawyer, at some point you might have thirst trapped somebody who was a recalcitrant witness. They didn't want to testify. So it really shows that they understand a whole bunch of nuances about the industry. I'm not sure if they consulted a lawyer who was related to a lawyer, but as a lawyer, I'm like, oh my God, this is so priceless because I've done it myself. Anyway, so she's like, if Blonsky's telling the truth, this guy busted him out of jail and probably ruined my entire case, right? So she's doing the fourth wall break to us. I know you can't wait to see Wong. I get it. I just want to make sure that you don't think that this is one of those cameo every kind of week type of shows, which you've seen this scene in a trailer before this. And it's funny because this is exactly what this is. And Jennifer kind of like, it dawns on her that she's protesting a little bit too much, that this is exactly the case. So she concludes, just remember whose show this actually is. The next scene, we have Los Angeles Now, the news show. Trending stories, She-Hulk represents Abomination. Of course, they're not using their human names. That's nowhere near as titillating. And underneath the lower third, it's really great. They're still laying down tracks for Titania to reappear in another episode. It's probably not going to be for another episode or two, as I understand it. And the lower third says, superpowered influencer Titania speaks out about latest legal troubles. She's confident that her legal team will make it go away. Sure. So the newscaster says that the news of Jennifer trying to get the Abomination out on parole is stirring up controversy, which they do harken back to a time or two later. Oh, wait. Yeah, episode 5, Alonzo, I think you're right. This is 40 years of the character. Yeah, no, from what I said before, yeah, you've got like 4 decades of material coming out. Definitely. Oh, my hair is just so frizzy this morning. All right, so then we switched to another show called The Tattle News. So this is kind of like a gossipy version of the news. Ever since it's been revealed that Jennifer Walters has a superhero alter ego called She-Hulk, the statuesque green lawyer has been plagued with public backlash, with many questioning her qualifications. Oh, really? This is where the news is revealed to be kind of dummies that are just going for like the quick hit and spreading rumors. We go back and unpack on this a little bit later in the episode. Jennifer Walters has been an attorney with a publicly vettable license for years, folks. And she even says later on in this episode, she wasn't just a first-year lawyer when we first met her. She'd been at work for several years, okay? And so with a publicly vettable license that would show you how many years that she's been at work. And then she was in the district attorney's office. Any real journalist, there's a bunch of different ways besides just scouring social media and pulling up references to, say an attorney to see what kind of cases they held, what kind of press coverage they got. There's also courtroom case crawlers. Like there's courtroom databases that it used to be super easy for, the news to go get like digital bots to crawl and see what cases were coming up when and what lawyers and what law offices were going up there. When I was more active out in the court system, I do virtual stuff now. But for 17 and a half years, I was out in the court system in New York, and anybody who knew what they were doing could even manually pull up to see what was on the court's docket for the day. So, I mean, there were like a million different ways to see that Jennifer was very qualified for, as a lawyer, as a litigator, as someone who's practiced, seemingly up until this point, nothing but criminal law. And then she worked for the DA's office, questioning her qualifications. Please. They're just, gerrymandering to the public. So then we pan backwards and you see that the Tattle News Daily is actually a show that's streaming on YouTube, or the MCU's version of YouTube. And then they've got like 385,000 subscribers. So the Tattle News is not some huge news station. So this is just sloppy journalism. And I love how they're saying this isn't exactly the hugest platform with millions of subscribers the way a lot of bigger news channels can have. Let me see. They're in the suggested videos or the up next videos that the algorithm would serve you up. They all basically say She-Hulk not ready, She-Hulk hoax, the truth about the so-called She-Hulk, and all of that sort of stuff. And apparently the hashtag the big green woman is apparently trending. Nice. Why don't they just call her the Jolly Green Giant? Oh, wait. That's branding that doesn't match. So this is perfect. You can see also we go to a Twitter-based platform, and you can see the Twitter-like social media platform with all of like the tweets or the posts that look like tweets, and it's all menfolk, or at least you can tell by the handles that these people are male or identify as male. And this is what I referred to earlier, where you've got folks saying, why are you turning every superhero into a girl? No more female superheroes, please. This is so perfect. So this is where I hearken back to what I said about Second Street Marvel. So many Marvel and or comic book theorists, not Second Street Marvel, have been whining, but a fellow comic book theorist, friend of this channel, Second Street Marvel, go check him out, go subscribe if you haven't, has come up with an idea for a video for me to do that talks about feminism and Marvel and how they're embracing it more. But I'm also going to discuss in that same video the backlash that Marvel has been getting as of late for being more feminist or female centric in their approach with their storytelling. They're getting more and more female leads, like Miss Marvel and like Captain Marvel a couple years ago, and now like She-Hulk. Alonzo Baylor says, it's so many female superheroes. Yeah, looking back, if you're a comic book lover, and I'm not saying that all these trolls in real life, or let alone here, are necessarily thoroughly versed in comics. I've been a comic book fan since 1986 with the Uncanny X-Men. That's how it started, and the New Mutants right after that, because I loved Colossus's character, and then I found out he has his sister Magic, and so I got into those two comics, parole, and then it just spiraled from there. So, but a lot of people aren't comic book lovers. When they are, even if they're kind of comic book lovers, you could see that Marvel had been espousing a whole bunch of different characters, different sexes, eventually more recent years, sexual persuasions, skin pigmentations, all of that stuff. They definitely leaned more and more into, trying to have a more broad-based spectrum of people. The X-Men were one example of that, especially the Uncanny X-Men version, when you had Storm and Colossus and, Nightcrawler and all of the different countries that they came from. And sometimes they would, like Colossus would say Bosche moi and like use Russian expressions and talk about how life was like back in the homeland versus living in a more, progressive United States. I mean, there's so much storytelling that's been done over the decades and so many nuances if you wanted to pay attention to it. But one of the side effects of Marvel gaining so much pop culture popularity, including with the success, I really felt like they got a big groundswell in 2008 with Iron Man. I think that's where they really started to get their groove back overall as a brand. And so I think you had millions of people come to the table with the movies and then eventually the Disney Plus shows who aren't as well versed as a lot of us are in the comics and the whole comic book saga of it all leading up to this. And so I think you're getting a lot of people who are ignorant in more ways than one who are mouthing off. I hate the people that make it seem like this is new, says Alonzo. And I agree with you, Alonzo. You sum it up very gracefully and succinctly, everything I just said. So let's see. We can't understand why so many people are freaking out about a female-centric focus for at least some of the storytelling that Marvel Studios is doing. Like, what is this, the 1950s? Like, nobody complained when Loki was a central focus. Loki's got the most attractive Rotten Tomatoes score ever. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, same thing. And some people felt, I like all of this stuff so far. I'm not a hater on any of it. But some theorists were banging on the whole Falcon and the Winter Soldier stuff too, saying, it was kind of like disjointed storytelling or whatever. But it didn't get this horrible, like, Rotten Tomatoes score. No, what did? Miss Marvel did, and now She-Hulk is. And so, but long before Miss Marvel or She-Hulk went into production, Captain Marvel was getting trolled. So it's like, this is absolutely pitch perfect. I love that the all-female led team that produced She-Hulk Attorney at Law predicted this form of trolling. They were already reacting to what was going on when this show was being shot. And so therefore, this scene that shows you all of the social media troll backlash is pitch perfect. You can even see from the names of some of these trolls that they're just simply nasty keyboard warriors who are living in their parents' basement. Like, at not here to make friends is somebody's, scandal saying, why everything gotta be female now? And another troll named at Neil Isn't Sorry 32. Wow, someone find a reason to cancel hashtag She-Hulk. And at Mom's Favorite, this is the best. They say, so we have a hashtag Me Too movement, and now all the male heroes are gone. They're gone? Okay, I think we completely ignored Loki. I think we completely ignored like lots of the movies that rolled out in the past years. I think we're ignoring Captain and the Winter Soldier. Come on. I mean, really? That was mostly a male bro fest, including Zemo, which was my favorite showing of Baron Zemo. And I'm so excited because they've definitely said he's going to be in the Thunderbolts. Oh, I love him. So you've got social media stickers that even say Team He-Hulk. Oh my God, that's so perfect. Alonzo Baylor says, I'm 27. I'm sorry. I don't know your age. Oh, I'm 50. I'll be 52 in October. And your subscriber group. But I just hate how people make it seem that comics is an issue. But when the MCU, they just assume things are supposed to be ripped from the pages. Rami, hey Rami, what's going on? I said hi to you before. The predictive bit was hilarious. They nailed it perfectly and sadly. No, Alonzo, this is a very, it's a female-led channel. And really, so far I haven't had any trolls come and attack me, but oh no, this is a very progressive and kindly audience and stuff like that. So you're fine. Everybody's fine to speak their truth here. We can even agree to disagree, folks. Just do it tastefully, and then that's fine. So you've got some additional commentary. Someone's doing a live stream, and there's a ton of angry faces and thumbs down as they're going live. But there are some thumbs up too. And there's side commentary on the live that is also pitch perfect to how things tend to be nowadays. Like from at Just Before Dawn saying, I like the idea of her. I just wish she would use her platform to stand up for the endangered lemurs. It's like she doesn't even care. And you're like, what? This has nothing to do with the facts and circumstances around She-Hulk or her representing Emil Blonsky. So obviously this is somebody that's just trying to seed the field with what they're interested about. Someone else on the live says, is it weird that I like her better green? And someone else just randomly is me-centric saying, I might make tacos tonight. It's like, who asked you, right? And then at Housewife for Life, they say, OMG, shut up. This is just so stupid. She-Hulk isn't even real. She's just some media puppet. And I love how that this person misspelled puppet, P-U-P-P-I-T. No. Which it just shows you people think they're so smart, but they're so dumb. And it also shows you that people, when they don't like something, immediately jump into conspiracy theory mode. At least some people do. Quick drink, because then I'm going to get into a Falcon and the Winter Soldier / Captain America Sam Wilson version Easter egg that I'm like, oh my God. I might just do a separate live to jump everybody else on this. Holy mackerel. Okay, so next on the news, you see Gideon Wilson, who's a former prosecutor, who's a talking head. This is previously recorded in New York. And of course, he's like ripping into Jennifer. You don't so much hear what Gideon Wilson is saying, but he is complaining about her doing this. But he's a nice Easter egg in and of himself. So if you really know the Marvel comic book saga, then you know in the Marvel comic book saga, Earth 616 no less, Gideon Wilson is the brother of Sam Wilson, who, of course, in the MCU is the Falcon turned Captain America. Well, it happens in the comics too. So Gideon was a father whose son died of AIDS, and in his grief, for whatever the reason, long story short, he goes and attacks the Hulk, Jennifer's cousin, not the She-Hulk, but the Hulk. He attacks the Hulk, blaming him somehow for the death of his son. And he went to become part of a gamma radiation experiment, got some powers, and then he went and attacked the Hulk with it. But the Hulk managed to reason with him about the fact that his son really died of AIDS, and he had to really come to grips with it. And Gideon apologized and ended up becoming a pastor in New York, right? And he runs AA meetings on the side. So it's interesting that they not only use the name Gideon Wilson, but they say that it was previously recorded in New York. So like if you were like a Marvel theorist or a comic theorist or comic book lover and you were like, wait, the whole New York nuance just cements. Yeah, oh yeah, it's a wink and a nod. This is definitely an Easter egg. And I love it because they're also starting to seed the field slowly about the upcoming Captain America 4. What is it? New World Order. So they're starting to slowly kind of warm up the pizza oven to slide in the pizza of that movie when it's time to do it. Then Jennifer is arguing that all of this coverage is really unfair. She can't understand the moral outrage that people have because whether you like Emil Blonsky or not, and whether he truly deserves parole or not, prison break or no prison break aside, she says, and justifiably so, there's something in this country called due process, and Emil deserves a fair hearing, which he does. That's the case in federal law and in all of the states and territories and holdings of America, right? You're innocent until proven guilty, yes, but even afterwards, even at a parole board hearing, you're supposed to get a fair and balanced hearing. Even if they end up saying no, they shouldn't just end up saying no and denying him parole because they don't like him or they don't like that he's a superhuman. So Nikki says you're in control of your own narrative. So if you don't like all the press coverage, there's something you could do about it, not only to benefit your client, but really to benefit yourself. Both women are right in this case. So Holloway calls Jennifer into his office. Nikki continues to make the case on the way there. She's like, come on, this case is huge. Everyone wants to know about every single detail of your life. You're a public figure now. She's right. I used to work for a firm in Rockland County that they did a lot of criminal work. I was on the other side heading up the civil end of things for them. So I didn't do criminal. And then they had family law, and occasionally I'd help out with that, but I was really like more general civil litigation. But the criminal attorneys, the two head partners, Ferraro and Zugabe, they both became public figures, whether they liked it or not, because of a lot of the cases that they did, whether they were high profile or not. You start doing criminal anything, or if you do civil litigation with a high profile client, you can definitely become a public figure, whether you want to be one or not. There's a difference between public figure and limited public figure. I'm not going to go into it here. If Jennifer is not careful, she can become a full-blown public figure like politicians are. I don't like politics on my channel, but I'm just saying, like, politicians are not limited public figures in the eyes of the law, so practically anything is fair game. Jennifer has to be careful as she goes more public to at least allow herself some of the additional protections that limited public figures do enjoy. I can get into this in another time. So she walks into Holloway's office. He's taking on a new client. And it's Dennis Bukowski, who is the hater since episode 1 of Jennifer. He works in the district attorney's office still. He was the one that would have gladly have ridden Jennifer's coattails and taken over the case that she was done prepping for in her opening scene for She-Hulk Attorney at Law episode 1. Alonzo Baylor says Daredevil on Netflix and MCU Disney Plus would get you some type of action, some type of great skill. Oh, you could understand things a whole lot more by watching those shows. Those definitely can give you a better feel for the practice of law and how courtrooms go. I actually have some good commentary about I can't really speak to the parole board past a certain point because I haven't done criminal law, but the civil case that Anthony Puglisi takes on for Dennis Bukowski is priceless. And the way it was handled does definitely sound real, including the application that they made to try and avoid trial. I'll get there. So Dennis does not want Jennifer in there. You can tell that Holloway is supportive of Jennifer because instead of Dennis refers to her as Jen Walters. This is where you show that your partner, this is where they are telegraphing to the audience that Holloway is supportive of Jennifer because he corrects Dennis. Even though he wants him as a client, he wants his retainer, he wants his money. He's like, no, Miss Walters. And Dennis is like, no way, we have way too much history for me to be comfortable with you taking on this case of mine. So Miss Mallory Brooke comes in. She's also with the Superhuman Law Division. They introduced her. That's an open loop that I'm sure is going to get closed over the remainder of the season. But she's identified as being as part of the Superhuman Law Division. Dennis checks her out and hits on her immediately, and she saying that she could be his next fiance, and she's like happy not to be involved and turns around and leaves. And Holloway's not going to force it because already, So Pug is in the room, and Dennis goes, "He looks cool. Yeah, I'll take him." Meaning Anthony Puglisi is going to take over and represent him, not Jennifer and not Mallory Brooke. But he's like, "Yeah, I'll take him." Like he's ordering a donut at a coffee shop or something. Alonzo says, "What do you know from the character? But while you're on this, no, that's not what's supposed to be said. I was trying to say some, huh?" Could you clarify, Alonzo? I'll happily answer your question. I'm just not sure. I'll blame me. I'm not sure what it is. This hair is not behaving today. All right. So Dennis apparently came in for help on a legal matter. He claimed that he was defrauded by an ex-girlfriend and wants to file suit in order to get his money back. Attorneys hate these cases, but if you're only as good as the client and the evidence that they bring you. So even though these cases are kind of like, ugh, if they're willing to pay the retainer and they have enough evidence to meet a basic threshold to make their case, a judge isn't going to laugh them out of court. A judge isn't going to sanction you for representing them or your office for taking the case. So he says that the girlfriend in question is a shape-shifting light elf from New Asgard. Wow, says Jen. So this is why it's coming into the Superhuman Law Division. This is why Jen was being called into the office, and you see the other players that are part of the Superhuman Law Division team there. So to be fair, Dennis says he thought he was dating Megan Thee Stallion. I kind of think it's funny because some guys joke that they want to ride a woman like a stallion. I know, I hate it. But this is a performing artist. This is the name that she chose, so whatever. But he thought he was really dating Megan Thee Stallion. And Jennifer, of course, thinks this is ridiculous because Dennis is a sleaze. Normal women wouldn't want to date him, let alone someone like Megan Thee Stallion. So she laughs her face off. And then Wong comes in through a portal and he says, "Miss Walters, I've received your message," because obviously the paralegal and Jennifer are both trying to get in touch with Wong so he can serve as a non-party witness at the time of the parole board hearing for Emil Blonsky. So Jennifer's like, she's not thrown by this at all because she has a superhuman in her family. So she's like, "Mr. Wong, great entrance, perfect timing." She goes, "I need to take this." And Holloway's like, "Go ahead," and Jennifer's like, "Pug, good luck, with Dennis's case." They both do a good job with their two separate cases, I have to say. So the next scene, Wong is reassuring Jen in her office that everything that Emil Blonsky told her was factual. Again, like I said earlier, I highly doubt this, but this is Wong reassuring Jen, and Jen has no reason as she sits there not to believe him. So Wong explains, "I extracted him from his cell against his own wishes. I required a worthy opponent as part of my training to become Sorcerer Supreme. And as Sorcerer Supreme," he uses his title like it's going to mean anything in a court of law, "I insist that he not be punished for my actions." So Wong gets up to leave and that's it, I'm done. There you go. And Jennifer's like, "Again, I will not be the one that is punishing him. The parole board won't release him. I need you to testify." So Wong offers to wipe everyone's memories, and she's like, "No." And then he's like, "We can send him to the mirror dimension." And Jennifer's like, "I don't know what that is, but no." And then, she goes, "What you can do is to help show up at the hearing and explain yourself." So, he's like, "Okay, well, we can always go to strategy B if that doesn't work." And he taps his nose and she goes, "Don't tap your nose." Do you know why she says that? I think you kind of have to be a little bit older to understand why tapping or wiggling the nose is no good. The character in a very old show called Bewitched used to do that, and boom, magic would happen. And she's like, "Please don't do that." She may be a superhuman, but she's not a magician, so she doesn't feel comfortable with that. Or a wizard. Oh. Anthony says, "Don't blame yourself. I was typing too fast, but I got you. Don't cry." Don't cry, be happy. All right. So Dennis said, okay, so the next scene, we're at Pug's office. Dennis is there. So, Mr. Bukowski, how much money in cash and gifts did you spend on the Megan imposter? Dennis doesn't want to give it to him. And it's like, hello, you have to give that to me. That's something that I need. I can't just go in there and make a general claim. Plus, also, if it made any sense to do so, Pug could have removed the case from California to federal court. You can, when there is a difference between two states, territories, or holdings, when the parties come from two different states, territories, or holdings in the United States, depending upon the facts and circumstances, you could remove things to federal court. I've done this before. And I believe the main threshold for a case that sounds in money damages, at least when I was actively practicing, was $75,000. So it turns out that he ends up pulling out of Dennis that he spent $175,000 on this shapeshifter. Oh my goodness. So Pug looks up Uscreen instead of YouTube. It's Uscreen in the MCU. He's trying to figure out about Megan Thee Stallion, as any attorney would have to do. And then he sees that there's a Megan Thee Stallion imposter fight at Celebrate, a club, you know. It's definitely what a lot of attorneys do now. When I was leaving active practice out in the court system, social media had just become a thing. So our research, having to go into the facts and circumstances of the case, what's out there on the internet and social media, and or what is out on social media or the internet that has to do with the type of human being that the opposing party is, or your own client too, because you want to be prepared. You can gather that up because you're allowed to bring in evidence that has to go to the character of the witness. This is so important for the trial that ends up involving Pug, Dennis, and the shapeshifter Rumi. Oh my God, I can't even believe that they pulled that in. So he's researching not only the facts and circumstances of the party, but what can he use against the party? How can he protect his own client? So he's on Uscreen instead of YouTube, because that's what the MCU version of this is. But funnily enough, we have a few Easter eggs on this screen. So first, you get your next QR code so you can enjoy another free She-Hulk comic. The second thing is you get a review video for Iron Man 3's honest review for the sneakers, the Iron Man 3 sneakers. You guys know, if you're a subscriber of my channel, I did a video. It's gotten hundreds of views, not bad for a channel my size currently, about Iron Man's possible return. Now, I know they're saying Robert Downey Jr. is going to be a no-go moving forward in the MCU. They did not say that they weren't bringing Iron Man back. And in that video, I went through a bunch of different direct and indirect references / Easter eggs to them bringing Iron Man back. They kind of almost have to, because you don't really have enough Avengers going on right now to make an Avengers team. And he was just too seminal and too important for them to just erase him completely from the MCU now. So whether that's Tom Cruise or somebody else coming in to play another maybe multiverse version of Iron Man, they've got to bring that character back in. I am telling you, I said it before, and I'm just going to say it again. They have not been subtle about Iron Man. So I do think in phase 5 and or 6, he's coming back in, and they're just letting you know. So then there's another Easter egg, Melgrado Tay, In Spite of You. I have to do research on this, but I bet you it's something. But that's a music video. And then fourth, you've got search terms up top that say stallion, fight, and imposter. Last time there were a lot of Easter eggs that had to do with search terms when Jennifer was researching different job positions and stuff like that. And so you had like Find Ant-Man. That was another tease about the upcoming Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And again, you heard it here. They're going to kill him. They're going to kill Scott Lang. They're going to probably kill the Van Dynes too. Maybe not the Wasp. So that I think the only two people walking out of there alive and or not super maimed at the end of Quantumania, it's going to be Stature. They need her for the Young Avengers. And probably the Wasp. Probably the Wasp survives. They do kill off Ant-Man in the comic book saga as well. So So then we have what looks to be Dennis coming right back into the door of Pug's office saying, I've had a change of heart. I'm going to drop the case. And Pug's like, what? And then he gets called away to take a very quick phone call. And the Dennis imposter, you know it is off the jump, picks up the very can of Red Bull that Dennis had been drinking while he was in Pug's office and talking about the damages. And they pick it up like they've never seen anything like that before. They sniff it. They've never encountered the drink before. And then they keep drinking it. And then Pug turns around and what he sees, he screams out security. But then Pug, or what looks like he's Pug now, walks out of his office, goes by the secretarial pool, and starts hitting on the ladies. I love harassing women in the workplace. It's my kick. Now that's just like so weird, and all the women are like, what? And Pug, both in the comic book saga and so far here, is like a good guy and a sweetheart. So the women are like, that's just weird on many levels. But then the fake Pug turns into Rumi, the light elf, and says, let that be a warning. So she's like, back off the case, don't take the case, or I'm going to ruin your life. So the next scene, we're back to the Supermax prison again. Newscaster is out there saying how the Abomination will appear before a parole board, and Jennifer Walters enters. There's public furor over the possible release. And then one of the newscasters from episode 1, I believe they were from She-Hulk episode 1, who named the She-Hulk herself, coined the phrase, notices that Jennifer's trying to go by undetected. And he's like, is that her? And everybody goes chasing after her. And it's funny because there's an Easter egg in terms of what one of the newscasters shouts out to her. Is it true that you were rejected by the Avengers? It seems like it's just a funny, goofy, like they're reaching for more salacious, stories to run sort of thing. And sure, but it's an Easter egg if you understand the comics. Jennifer was part of the Avengers for years, but there did come a point, and I referenced this in one of my prior videos on this channel, is Holden Holloway a sleazy lawyer? Which I don't think he is. I really don't. But I give you all the reasons why in the comic book saga. And so far here, things are working out nicely too, but who knows? So, but I explain that in the comic book saga, Jennifer gets not so much thrown out of the Avengers. She just gets kicked out of the mansion that they live in because her lifestyle is too wild. So the Avengers did reject her. That same day, she lost a different job before she went to GLK&H, and she went to a bar to drink down her sorrows. And that's where Holden Holloway met her, both in the comic book saga and here in the MCU saga too. So this is a really fun Easter egg if you understood what happened to her in the past in the comics. And of course, this News 6 newscaster hears what the other newscaster shouts out at her and continues to spread the unfounded rumor, and apparently she was rejected by the Avengers. But this is kind of very much real life, right? They're all going for titillation. They're all desperate to be in on the story and be in on the act. So the Abomination, Emil shows up in his hearing, and his 7 soulmates, who are not the Thunderbolts. Notice I did not come out on my channel and say during a live stream, I don't believe I ever did, and I certainly didn't do a video, pre-recorded one on my channel, theorizing that the 7 soulmates were going to be the Thunderbolts. I was like, something told me, number one, in my gut, that was a little bit too easy of a layup, but I could see how the other theorists were tempted. I can, but I knew to stay away from it because this was an all-female led production. And I thought, if I was a woman and I was dealing with a criminal hearing, everybody knows these pen pal systems. You get like jailbird wives and stuff like that. So I was like, I don't know. I think they're going to run with the more obvious thing, but it would still be hysterical. Oh my God. I laughed till I cried several times during this episode. It was priceless because you have these 7 hippie looking women all in their gowns and wreaths of flowers in their hairs, and they're all praying and throwing him kisses. It was the best. Oh my God. So I'm glad I didn't run with the with the Thunderbolts thing. All the way through the end credits, they carried it. It was so perfect. So Jennifer asks Emil, are these your soulmates? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, I have no idea how this was possible. But whatever. There's a lot of lonely women out there who want to believe that bad guys, they're attracted to bad boys. They think they can turn around. This is so perfect. So the head of the parole board's like, we're here to determine if Emil Blonsky can be returned to society after having served his minimum sentence. So we know he served his minimum sentence. And in light of recent evidence that there's been a prison escape, I think we all know how this is going to go. So let's hurry up. And Jennifer's like, no, no, no. As Mr. Blonsky's counsel, I would love to address the alleged prison escape. We do have a witness who's able to clear Mr. Blonsky of any wrongdoing on his part. So they're like, okay, let's just start off with that. But Jennifer knows that Wong isn't there yet. So she's like, I can't do that. So she buys Wong time to arrive. She says the witness is prepared to give his statement after Mr. Blonsky gives his. So, and to be fair, they really should be opening up with the potential parolee statement. So they ask him if he's been rehabilitated, and Blonsky stares at the female parole board member a little bit too long. I'm already wondering what's up there, but then he speaks. I want to start by saying that I feel great remorse. These are buzzwords that every parole board hears, that every defense attorney is going to tell them to spit out. I also feel great shame. Okay. I've spent every day of my incarceration focused solely on that. Not really believable. People usually think about themselves. So he's going a little bit too heavy-handed. I've changed emotionally, physically, metaphysically, spiritually. He's going on and on and on, which shows that, yeah, really he's been focusing more on himself. But we all have that perspective to a certain degree, to be fair. So Jen's like, what Mr. Blonsky is trying to say is that the man that you see before you, parole board, is not the same Emil Blonsky as before. All he wants to be now is a contributing member of society. So they ask him a standard question, as I understand it. I have friends that practice criminal law, but I don't. I never have. If released, where, would you have a place to live? They don't want to release, who would be formerly incarcerated individuals out onto the streets. That doesn't generally bode well for them. They have to have a life to transition to. And Blonsky's like, oh yeah, you can rely on that. He doesn't give any more specifics. So this is where I kind of feel there's a little bit of a Thunderbolts undercurrent. It just doesn't involve the 7 soulmates. So Jen's like nodding confidently. Mr. Blonsky does own a plot of land on which he plans to work and reside. Now, this was discussed in the previous episode where Blonsky informs her he has these 7 soulmates. He told her he met them through the prison pen pal system. Turns out this was directly, literally true, and that these women collectively were going to start a life with him and chipped in money so that they could have land to live on. I guess is this big happy family, right? So, of course, the parole board is not metabolizing it this way. They're like, he's going into farming? And Jennifer's like, no, actually, he plans to open up a meditation retreat on the property. And then they cut in with a very fair question. How does he plan to fund this endeavor? He's not making very much money in prison. They never do, right? So she says, Mr. Blonsky is currently in a long-term committed relationship with 7 pen pals. And all the ladies in their gowns and with their flowers in their hair all waving like, yoo-hoo, it's us. And I just, oh my God, it was so funny. And she goes, all of whom have pledged to financially support him. Well, you do have friends, family members, ex-spouses, whomever, pen pals, who, may show up. They may be asked to testify in front of the parole board, as I understand it, just to give enough evidence to corroborate that this person has a life to go out to when they leave prison, right? So then, excuse me, Emil names all of the women, and he's throwing kisses to them, and they're all blowing kisses and waving, and he's like, love you. And it's like, ugh. So Jennifer's like, I don't think we need to get into that any further. Any other questions? Everyone on the parole board is raising their hands, because I don't think you often see 7 people who are willing to all be in a polyamorous relationship with one another. It's hilarious. So in the next scene, we have an overhead shot of the Supermax prison. Someone else is testifying. So this gets into some really real and accurate depictions, as I understand it. It would be similar in a civil hearing, trial, mediation, arbitration. And for my friends who practice criminal law, all the years we've ever chatted, I see, I know that they're going to have character witnesses, non-party witnesses testify on these people's behalf at the parole board hearing. We get a shot of Jennifer's tablet, and it says the District Court of Los Angeles, State of California. They give a case number. I'll go research the case number to see what it is. If it's another Easter egg. And she's got her preliminary witness and exhibit list of the defendant. She had to turn this in advance to the parole board because they don't like surprises. They have to know how many witnesses they have to block off time. So witness and role are the two columns for this table. And the first witness listed is Wong as Sorcerer Supreme, Sean Holt, who is a prison counselor, Amy Chance, the librarian, and Carl Cowart, who's a prison guard. He was funny. Of course, these are super supportive witnesses, or the defendant wouldn't call them, right? The librarian, the prison counselor, of course, is testifying and assuring that everyone that Blonsky was a willing participant. He's made great progress. The librarian's like, Blonsky led meditation and yoga groups. He wasn't just, a well-read individual. The DODC guard cries gratefully and says how Emil was like basically his life coach and saved him from a bad marriage. And then I almost lost it. As the librarian, I guess, she was like, instead of prison wine, he got the prisoners to make toilet kombucha. So, listen, I'm no fan of kombucha, but even if you are one, this is totally hysterical, because when you think about what kombucha looks like, and then you imagine what prison kombucha must be, oh my God. Woo. So the prison guard keeps crying hysterically. He was so funny. He's like, I release you, Linda. I mean, oh my God. Emil's like, proud of you, Carl. Oh my God, I'm dying. But still, Wong hasn't arrived to testify yet. So, everybody's done with their testimony. The board's like, hello, where's Wong? And then he appears through a portal. And I think it's funny because if you look in the background, it looks like a friggin' living room in Comertage. It does not, it's so casual. It's so funny. So he comes out of his living room. I'm sorry, I lost track of time. Jennifer explains that Wong is the individual responsible for Emil Blonsky having left prison. She goes, and I think you will see this whole thing in a different light after hearing from him. Oh, yeah, they do. Oh, yeah, they do. So hold on. Rami says, this episode has so far been the best depiction of what the whole show is going for. Agreed. I mean, if you just could capture the whole lightning of it in a bottle, it was episode 3 so far. I totally concur. So now we're in the courtroom with the civil proceeding that Pug is doing on behalf of his client, who is the plaintiff in this case, Dennis Bukowski. So you have the shapeshifter out there. I guess her name is Rumi, and her attorney is there, and she makes a motion to dismiss the case against her client. Really quickly, I want to say, depending upon your litigation strategy, you don't want a case to go to trial, whether it's a bench trial with just a judge, this is civil stuff, or whether you have a judge and a jury panel. Sometimes when you understand how good a judge is on a particular topic, you don't want a jury at all. You would think that everybody wants a jury of their peers. You have a right to a trial in front of a jury of your peers. But what you may not know is that your counsel might say, you know what? I don't want to take the risk that I have to have X amount of individuals all understand something that could be complicated and or could pull at their emotions so much it might not help my client's case. A judge, they've seen practically everything, even if they have just a little bit of experience. And if you know how a judge tends to rule or how they decide written motions and appeals, you might just want a judge, right? So, and you might not want to have a trial at all. You might do what's called a motion for summary judgment, or if it's early on in a case, a motion to dismiss the complaint in its entirety. That's something that, of course, a defense attorney would do against the plaintiff. Since Dennis is the plaintiff, you have Rumi's current counsel saying, I want the case dismissed. I don't even want to have to waste my client's time or money or anything going through a trial. I don't think a judge on a bench trial or a judge in a jury needs to hear this. So that's why they did a motion to dismiss. Once discovery starts or at a different point in a case, you would do a motion for summary judgment. Either way, the most layperson friendly way I can describe this is that it's a trial on paper. So you're having a trial, but not in front of a jury for sure. And it's really a judge and or their law clerk who's going to be writing these decisions. But if you think you want to just spare your client time and money, a motion to dismiss or a motion for summary judgment makes sense. I know in New York, if I were representing somebody on a personal injury case, let's say, or for a case with monetary damages otherwise, like what Pug is doing with Anthony, I know that if I made a motion for summary judgment, I'm not going to go dismiss my own case. So I would not do a motion to dismiss my complaint, but I would definitely, even pre-discovery, go for a motion for summary judgment. I'd lay out all my proofs as exhibits, and I would say, hey, judge, I think on liability, I should be granted a win. And maybe, depending upon your motion for summary judgment, you could also ask for the judge, depending upon the case, to fix damages. So in this case, if it's moneyed owed and not a personal injury case, we're not really talking about pain and suffering or anything like that. Yes, I could see like Pug making a motion for summary judgment saying, find in favor of my client. All he's asking for is $175,000. We have proofs that he spent the $175,000. We have proofs that he relied to his detriment, that he really thought he was dating the pop artist Megan Thee Stallion, rather. And so therefore he was fooled. This was a shapeshifter elf. She grifted him for the money. He was defrauded. He never would have spent this money. I mean, you're not only looking at an elf, you're looking at an old lady elf, okay? I'm an older woman, and even I would say that Dennis wouldn't want to, go hit that. So at the end of the day, I would make a motion saying, grant me summary judgment, Your Honor. Liability, she defrauded him. Find in my favor. Now I don't have to try the case on liability. If you can also agree on damages, and here they'd be more concrete, he's owed $175,000 back, you could get summary judgment on damages. Summary judgment on liability is way more popular than damages, but it can happen. And in a case like this, it could. In New York, as soon as you have a finding of summary judgment in favor of the plaintiff, even on liability alone, and damages are not fixed, you have a 9% interest that runs on the daily until either the payout is made or we have a trial on damages and then there's a judgment, a verdict and a judgment, and then you have to pay. Nobody. So whatever the interest rate might be in California might be different. Nobody, once a motion for summary judgment is granted on liability, let alone damages, is going to let the case hang out. So that's another reason why an attorney might go for a motion for summary judgment. But here the motion was made on behalf of the Elven diplomat Rumi, and her attorney is making a motion to dismiss the complaint. I don't even think this case should be in front of the judge for a moment more. Hey, Dano Cosmic, what's going on? Good to see you. Good morning. So apparently the defendant is identified as an Elven diplomat on Asgard, now New Asgard. And so her attorney makes a really nuanced argument. As such, she enjoys diplomatic immunity. Maybe not. And that's something that I can make a separate video on, if that was even a possibility and what even is diplomatic immunity. But the judge makes it clear that even though she may enjoy diplomatic immunity, we're not in New Asgard. This case is not venued in Asgard, New Asgard. So I'm not sure that her diplomatic immunity triggers. If defense counsel were to stay on with Rumi, you'll see what happens in a minute. She could have made a motion maybe arguing that and getting the judge to change his mind. You can do that. But the defendant jumps up. The defendant herself, Rumi, jumps up and says, excuse me, Your Honor, but Asgard is not a place, it's a people. And she's making an argument that the people could be everywhere, I bet you, and that her diplomatic immunity could extend everywhere. Whether or not she could actually enjoy diplomatic immunity, it is not really a complete panacea and cure-all, but I digress. The judge cuts her off and tells her that inspirational speeches are not admissible in court. Self-serving testimony, folks, without anything more in terms of evidence or law or both to support it, will tend to be dismissed, either sua sponte from the bench by the judge, or in a motion, you could say, disregarded in its entirety. And there's tons of case law in all the states that say that. So this is very authentic so far. So Pug says, Your Honor, this case is very cut and dry, and it could be. My client was defrauded of $175,000 by a scam artist. He deserves compensation for the financial and emotional trauma that he has suffered. Now, would I personally sit there and get into emotional trauma? Maybe not. Maybe I might mention it if I were representing Dennis Bukowski in court on this matter, just to kind of say, hey, it's the $175,000 that's cut and dry. And if defendant knows what's good for them, they might want to just settle out with me, because if we get into the whole issue of emotional trauma, you may judge. I didn't see a jury, so this looked like a bench trial. You may agree with me that on top of the $175,000, if I prove in my case there, my client might get some extra money for his pain and suffering, which judges can do, courts can do. Juries can't do, but a judge can do it if they want. And they can do like additional, like triple damages if they want to, if they feel that something is especially egregious, but I digress. The defense counsel says, on behalf of Rumi the Elf, my client and Mr. Bukowski were engaged in a consensual relationship and that they were engaged in role play. How clever. So she's saying he knew she was a shapeshifter. No rational adult, she goes on, would have believed that my client was the real Megan Thee Stallion. Mr. Bukowski knew that my client wasn't the real Megan and went along with it until he was through with her. This is a relationship gone bad and not a scam. And again, I could really see something like this playing out. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily have superhumans in the civil courts that I've gone to in my day, but somebody could say they were a scam artist, they were a grifter, they took advantage of me emotionally. That's more commonplace than you might think. And I could see a very similar argument being made on behalf of counsel by the defense. Hey, Second Street Marvel, just finished the episode. I'm sure you did. Mr. Bukowski was blinded by love, says Pug. He absolutely believed that he was dating the real Megan Thee Stallion. So Judge Price says, I must say I find it hard to believe that Mr. Bukowski could be fooled so easily, and the onus is on you to prove that, Mr. Puglisi, which is true. That being said, I'll allow this to go to trial. So the judge himself is not going to grant the motion to dismiss. Why? Because usually motions to dismiss are thrown out. If it's not on a matter of procedure, which doesn't seem to be the case here, when it comes to it otherwise, a judge will say, I can't grant the motion to dismiss. Or if it were a motion for summary judgment, like I explained a moment ago, I can't grant the motion for summary judgment because there's a question of fact. And I'm not surprised that the judge said, especially in a case like this, I'm going to let this go to trial. I know how I feel sitting here now, but I'm supposed to be a neutral arbiter. So everybody bring their side of the story and their evidence to bear, and I'll make a decision from the bench afterwards. So Miss Buna, or whatever the attorney's name is, your motion to dismiss is denied. Dennis is assuring Pug on the way out the door that he's canceling his subscription to a service called Hollywood Hookups, which was hilarious because he's a sleazeball. And that's where you think, folks like him might get dates. So meanwhile, the judge runs back up to the bench and everybody's like, what? And we don't see, if you spot it, if you look, you don't see the elf sitting next to her counsel. Her counsel's there, but the elf isn't. So we know what's going on. We know things are going to go really bad, really fast, right? So the judge says, in light of some new information that's come to my attention, I'm changing my ruling about the motion to dismiss. The way Judge Price is speaking telegraphs it's not him. And then he laughs, and it's totally clear at that point what's going on because it doesn't fit the demeanor of the judge. So Pug says, come on, Runa, this is getting totally out of hand. He's seen her pull this on him. He knows what's going on. Her own attorney stands up and says, impersonating a judge is illegal. Get down from there. And you're like, if you don't understand lawyering, you'd be like, she wouldn't say that to her own client. If things go really south, really hard, really fast in an unquestionable way, an attorney might want to immediately distance themselves from their client. Because they don't want to be associated with illegal, immoral, or unethical behavior. It could cost them their license. They could get sanctioned. They could lose their license temporarily or permanently. They don't want to do that. So in a case where it's this kind of cut and dry, I could see myself doing that and being like, whoa, 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 I'm directing you to get down from there. Have you lost your senses? And that has to be, if you've got a court reporter there, you've got a transcriptionist, they're taking down and documenting what Miss, I guess, Buna is saying to her client, which is important because if her client, if her client continues to engage in this dangerous behavior, dangerous to the license of the attorney could make a motion to withdraw his counsel. And believe it or not, if Rumi the Light Elf fought her on that, she'd need to cite to the transcript to say, I immediately identified my then client's poor behavior. I warned her she was breaking the law. She didn't listen to me. I told her to get down there and stop breaking the law, and she didn't listen to me. So, Your Honor, if she still wants me as her counsel, I don't. There's been a breakdown in communications. Release me. And they would do that. So I've made one motion like that through the years, obviously a very different set of circumstances. And yes, it was granted. So Rumi runs off, or Runa, whatever her name is, runs off with a court officer giving chase. Pug reassures Dennis, this is very good for us. Sure, this outburst is admissible, right? Again, you have a court transcriptionist taking down everything. And if it was videotaped, yes, you've got that too. It also goes to the character of the witness, which becomes an important thing, but it's spun on Dennis Bukowski and not as much Runa or Rumi. So just so you lay folk understand, things can go, evidence can be brought in that has to do with the character of the witness. And judges really should allow it, especially during hearings or trials. They should allow it, even though this extraneous evidence maybe does not dovetail in with the exact claim that's being made, like by Dennis Bukowski that he was being defrauded. It may have nothing to do with the facts and circumstances of the case, but nevertheless, the laws of evidence say that you're allowed to bring in otherwise unrelated evidence to go to the character of the witness. So yes, Runa or Rumi impersonated a judge. Yes, between the attorney and the judge later, impersonating the judge is a crime. And it's, maybe unrelated to the allegations of, fraud or defraudment. But it'll be brought into the character of the witness if necessary. That's why Dennis was telling Pug that this was good for his case, because if nothing else, he could revert back to the court transcript, the videotaped evidence, and say, Runa has, no regard for anybody. She will shapeshift to get whatever she wants whenever she wants it. And she clearly doesn't care about the consequences. So at that point, you have to guess that he would have introduced this evidence to the judge, to the court, and that at that point, it's pretty much a slam dunk case. But even if you were in a civil case, but somebody had a criminal background, and the facts and circumstances of their crimes had nothing to do with this current case and or this current plaintiff or victim, yes, it can be brought in. Get, evicted from an apartment, that can be brought in as character to go to a character of the witness. Have a bunch of parking tickets, paid or unpaid, that can go. A really crazy DMV record otherwise, that can go to the character of the witness. What else have I seen that works in to it? I mean, stuff that people argue they can't consider this. This has nothing to do with this case, the claim. Too bad. Oh, bad credit scores can go towards the character of a witness, even if the case has nothing to do with finances. Why? Because it explains to a jury, people lie, the evidence doesn't. This person is not a reliable witness. So if any case, criminal or civil, were to become a question of fact or, a credibility contest between witnesses, this is what smart lawyers do. It's nuanced lawyering. It's leveraging evidentiary law. Even in federal court, let alone California or New York, you could bring it in and you could slaughter the opposition if you wanted to. So in the next scene, we're back to the parole board hearing. Wong, as a non-party witness on behalf of the parolee, the potential parolee, says, I was the one who removed Mr. Blonsky from his cell. I gave him no choice. It was absolutely his choice to return. I offered him asylum at Carmartage, which is truly lovely this time of year, but he was quite adamant that he be returned to serve out his sentence and repay his debt to society. So Jennifer's pleased. The parole board's drinking this in. But again, if you saw Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings and you saw that scene, I don't think that's entirely true. So I'm not saying that Wong's an evil person, but sometimes when we are, looking out for our own best interests, if he likes fight clubs and he ended up being friends with the Abomination, he's going to say whatever he needs to say. And good luck everybody trying to prove that, prove otherwise, So Jennifer says to the panel, you see, Emil Blonsky was forced out of his cell against his will, and when offered instant freedom, he chose to return to his cell. These are not the actions of a criminal, but of a reformed man who truly wants to do the right thing. Okay, this is good lawyering, but what she's about to do when everything goes sideways is even better lawyering. And this is where a truly good litigator comes to shine. So they say at the panel, one of the folks on the parole board rather says that may be true of Emil Blonsky, but when Emil Blonsky becomes the Abomination, isn't he a raging monster who's out for blood? So Emil's trying to put everybody's minds at ease. He's like, hold on. And he's taking off his white Crocs that are so fashionable right now. And Jennifer's like, no. Everything's going well. Don't mess up the case. All she had to do was give reassurances that he's under control, listen to the testimony of everybody who testified before, and she could have put a bow on this and wrapped it up, right? But no, Emil thinks he's helping, and he turns into the Abomination. The parole board is terrified. One lady's screaming her head off, and he's just sitting there. He's not doing anything. He's gently putting his Crocs down on the floor. But they're all, whoa, like they lost their minds. Officers are coming in with their guns drawn. The 7 soulmates are all, turned on by him turning into the Abomination. They're all, woo, okay, big boy. I was laughing my face off. But Emil, meantime, very calmly, the way they animated his eyes and his facial expression shows he's truly calm. And he goes, as you see, I'm in full control. And Wong's telling the DOD guards to put their guns down. They don't need them. A show of force is not necessary. Emil changes back at Jennifer's command. He's showing he's in control. He's showing he can follow instructions, and he covers himself with a towel. This is where Jennifer shows that she's not a good lawyer. She's a great lawyer. Because immediately she apologizes for what she stylizes as Emil Blonsky's enthusiasm. His enthusiasm to show the board, yes, I'm in control. Look, I'm the Abomination. Now I'm not. I'm totally calm while the Abomination, and I'm still calm after I changed. So she says, in fact, this proves that in every instance, Mr. Blonsky could have broken free, but has chosen to remain in his cell. As his stellar prison record reflects, Mr. Blonsky spent his entire incarceration practicing a strict regimen of training and self-discipline. Remember what the other non-party witnesses testified, so that he may walk among his fellow citizens with no chance of becoming a rampaging abomination again. He deserves a future as a free man and as a productive citizen. So the board is calmed down enough. They thank Miss Walters. They assure her that they will consider all the facts and will reconvene again once the decision is made. The woman on the parole board that had been screaming hysterically goes, and please get this man some clothes. The fact that she shows some sympathy for him because now he's wrapped up in a towel kind of is a poker's tell that they'll calm down, they'll double check everything, but they're probably going to let him go. But Mr. Wong was like, oh, once I'm done with my testimony, y'all will see this in a different light. They do, because, the parole board is like, and Mr. Wong. And he's like, no, just Wong. He's all full of himself. He's all like high on his own supply. Master of the mystic arts, blah, 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 blah. He lists all these titles. He's all very calm. And so the head of the parole board goes, you realize that you just admitted to facilitating a prison escape, which is a crime. Immediately, Wong's like, I must depart. And he goes. Back he goes to Covertage, and Jennifer leaves the Supermax prison. And of course, the press is all over her. One of the reporters tells the camera, kind of a fourth wall break unto itself, if you will, that Jennifer Walters must be hoping to avoid the protesters gathered outside the prison gate. So they're letting us know she's going to get into trouble. They open a loop that closes a bit later on. So there's a scene change. We're back at the Legalese bar. Jennifer's complaining to Nikki. I get to my car and someone is, I guess, writing on it saying monster defending a monster. So we've already kind of closed the loop, but arguably it closes even more at the end of the episode. Nikki says, this can all go away, you know. She's urging Jennifer to be in charge of her own narrative, to do a public interview at least, which a lot of criminal attorneys and even civil attorneys can and will do. They'll take on their own press to control narrative about themselves, their office, their client, the case. Jennifer declines, though. Just like Iron Man, to me, I feel this is another Iron Man Easter egg. I talked about a bigger one a bit ago. She goes, hard pass. And she says it and delivers it the same way that Tony Stark did. Then she says, I can't wait for all of this to be over so that I can go back to being a normal, anonymous lawyer. As though that's possible. This is ridiculous. And she adds reluctantly, who also happens to be a Hulk. So this is part of the struggle that she has. Some critics of the series, and I did a video about this. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you do. Check out my argument, why She-Hulk is better than you think. But some folks are mad that she just seemed to adjust to her powers so quickly. I don't want to steal the thunder of the other video. There's some obvious reasons why she wouldn't be as freaked out as like Joe Blow in the street might be. But on a separate note, that's not the whole point of the story that they're telling. She's struggling with her identity, not the powers, not the responsibility for the powers. This is a more nuanced argument, okay? This is a more nuanced storytelling. She's struggling with wanting to put that aside so that she could just go back to the life that she had. Okay, so Nikki, meanwhile, tells her, what are you talking about? Jen, the genie's out of the bottle. She shows Jennifer some of the press and the social media about her. And of course, they're accusing her of being yet another soulmate of the Abomination. It's all like, this is the Inquirer or something like that, the National Enquirer. She's pregnant with his child and she's flaunting a baby bump already. You could just see this stuff playing out in real life to some degree. And then Pug sits down next to Nikki. And he's like, oh, God, Dennis Bukowski. Believe me, attorneys might not talk about their clients' cases so much. They do have to protect their clients. But you could say whether or not you don't like a client, kind of complain that they're a difficult client or whatever, something that has to do more with the client themselves and not their case. So it's okay that he's doing that. That's not him being a bad lawyer. Nikki, of course, knows Dennis from the DA's office. She identifies that and slides him her drink. And she goes, you're going to need that. So there's a fourth wall break again. Jennifer says to the camera, I can't believe how this story ends. And it ends in an interesting way in two different directions. So Nikki, in the meantime, is explaining to Pug how she hates Dennis so much from having worked with him. She's killed him in her head over and over again. She loathes him so much. Then both women acknowledge how gross and what a chauvinist pig Dennis is, and he's terminally deluded. He thinks that every woman wants him. Pug has a revelation, so this shows how good of a lawyer he is on his feet, because he says, are you willing to say that under oath? Because it goes to the character of his witness, as I explained before. But importantly, yes, it's showing that his client has a bunch of warts, but it also establishes how his client could be so easily fooled into thinking he was dating the real Megan Thee Trainor. So we have a scene change. Jennifer's got her right hand on the Holy Bible. She's being sworn in as a character witness. Yes, technically on behalf of Dennis. It's kind of a backhanded blessing. By the way, of course, the defendant Runa has new counsel. You can see that. The previous one, no doubt, like I said earlier, withdrew from the case. She doesn't want to be sanctioned. She doesn't want her license taken away, nothing like that. So Pug says, Miss Walters, how would you describe your relationship with Mr. Bukowski? She identifies they worked together for several years at the DA's office. So he says, would you say that you knew Mr. Bukowski very well? He's very carefully laying down the foundation for each question in bite-sized chunks. Why do lawyers do that? Because if we just jump ahead to try and make a compound point, defense counsel in this case would be saying, objection. You want to lay down the foundation for every single question that you can to keep as much of the facts and circumstances and the meat of the testimony of, say, your client in this case, if you're Pug representing Dennis's interests. So he's just very bite-sized, asking the questions so that the questions and the answers are less likely to be stricken, and he can use that to not only convince the judge, but if he needs to appeal the judge's decision, he's got the transcript very clean, so he's more likely to make a successful appeal. So if you're like, why can't attorneys just jump right to it? He's got to be careful. He's got to lay down the foundation. So Jennifer says, we work regularly on cases together, so I spent a lot of time with Mr. Bukowski. She's not just somebody that kind of knew him at the office. They knew each other very, very well for years. Pug said, did he ever share his personal life with you, specifically his dating life? Well, if you've worked together for years and you've handled a lot of cases together for years, it's more believable for the judge or an appellate panel, if you have to go to an appellate division, it's more believable that the witness would, probably have heard about his dating life and his personal life. And so Jennifer says, yes, he would, prolifically and unprompted. Dennis shouts out, you wanted to know! And that was so funny. So Pug says, how would you characterize Mr. Bukowski in relation to his romantic life? So Jennifer says, self-absorbed, chauvinistic, conceited. He once described himself as a New York 10 and an LA 11, which is funny again, because as I said earlier in the comic book saga, Goodman, Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway has offices in both New York and in LA. And then she goes on and says he nicknamed his office the Dennis Sphere. So I'm going to tell you right now, you might believe that I would say this. I never did anything other than business work as an attorney in my office. That being said, Playboy attorneys might bring people into their office to do things that isn't legal work in there. So, you might think they were just making a joke at Dennis's expense. But again, if you're somebody who's worked in the legal field or know people who do, stories of people walking in on things that weren't legal work is not exactly as rare as you'd think. So Dennis got quite busy in the Dennis sphere. Dennis himself objects, which is funny because he may be a lawyer, but he's not his own lawyer. You can be your own lawyer or represent yourself pro se, as the court system goes, whether you're a lawyer or not. But that's not what he's doing here. He's got Anthony Puglisi to represent him. So this is hysterical. So when the judge reminds him, you can't object, sit down. It's been stated, and so Pug goes on, very smart. It's been stated many times in this courtroom that a man of reasonable intelligence would never think that he was dating the real Megan Thee Stallion. In your opinion, Miss Walters, do you think that Dennis Bukowski would believe that he could ever date the real Megan Thee Stallion? And she goes, yep. He is almost a pathologically entitled man. He would absolutely believe that he was dating the real Megan Thee Stallion because he truly is that delusional. And her smile is just on point. She's enjoying herself. Sure, she's helping him, but for all the years that he was like, I'll take the closing argument, I'll handle this case, mansplaining his face off, she couldn't wait to just dig the dagger in him. And he's got to take it because he wants his $175,000 back. So at the end of the day, the judge awards the full $175,000 to Dennis. I don't think it's just because of the testimony that Jennifer gave. I think that if this were real life and I were Pug, I would also get the transcript and the video evidence in there showing Rooney or whatever, changing her image and doing, she does this all the time. She fakes people out all the time and she doesn't even care. She's very flippant. She'll even impersonate a judge. That shows how much respect she has for humanity. But Dennis is delighted, of course, because he's going to theoretically get his money back, or at least get a judgment that says he's entitled to his money back. You might be like, well, why is he so excited? Rooney might just run away and never pay him. Well, without getting too into it, people often say that a judgment is only worth the paper that it's printed on. Now, I'm not giving anybody legal advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. I will just say this in a general broad brushstroke statement. You actually are better off getting a judgment saying that somebody is directed and ordered to pay you something. If they run off, they leave the country, they die, whatever, just a second, and they don't pay on the verdict, you have to do a certain amount of work on your end to show that you went to enforce the court order, and for whatever the reason, you can't collect your money. At the very least, there should be, and you will have to talk to your tax expert about this, folks, which I am not, but if you get a judgment like that, the judgment and the enforcement documentation afterwards, if you can't collect, you should be able to write this off against income. Maybe. I'm just being very careful. So I don't want anyone thinking I'm giving out legal and or tax advice specifically. This is issue spotting. It's possible and it could happen. So at least Dennis gets back the judgment of $175,000. If the light elf doesn't pay and he can't go for an enforcement proceeding where he identifies assets and has them frozen, because he could do that. So she's a diplomat. Maybe she makes money and maybe she's got money in a bank and maybe he can have it drained. But in lieu of that, he might be able to still at least get a tax write-off, maybe. All right. So in the meantime, you have the real Megan Thee Stallion who's in the back. She's giving herself props and taking video. Of course she attended the trial. She's a subject of it, even though she's not a party. So she or counsel on behalf really should have been there. So if you're like, oh, how weird that they put her there, how funny. No, that can be art imitating real life. This was a trial that was open to the public too, of course. You saw the folks in the back. So she has a right to be there anyway. And even if the hearing was closed to the public, she could have had her own attorneys make an application so that she and or her own counsel could still be present. In lieu of that, if they're not being called as witnesses, maybe, just maybe, they could have some of the records unsealed so they could understand what happened to her. It depends. But since this was open to the public, she had every right to be there. So, plus she's recording content so that she can use it on behalf of her own platform, which is very smart. And of course, on the way out the door, Dennis is asking everybody if they think he has a shot at the real Megan Thee Stallion. Yikes. Dennis concludes, though, smartly, I feel that she, meaning Rumi or whatever her name is, got a slap on the wrist. I wish there was some way that we could remove her powers, make sure she can't victimize anyone else. Now, we know, if you've seen the Deadpool movie, Deadpool 2, you had Fire Fist. They had the inhibitor collars on him and other folks at a different Supermax prison, including Deadpool. When the collar got broken off him, I love how he was just like, hello, superpowers, So they already have the inhibitor collars, right? So, but then this begs the fourth wall break. Did Dennis B just give me an idea? She-Hulk asks the camera. This will stay between us. But that's an open loop. And like I said, her struggle isn't the fact that she got powers. Her struggle isn't the fact that she's not responsible with her powers. Her struggle right now is that she really kind of still doesn't want them. She's not 100% sold that this is the best life for her. So we're going to see where that open loop takes us. That's a Chekhov's gun that just went off. Then we have a scene change. We're outside the walls, the barbed wire fence of the Supermax prison. The newscasters are all there in a frenzy. And Jennifer's in front of the parole board. Emil is waiting for his, decision there from them. And the 7 soulmates all have prayer hands going on. It's just And after reviewing his record, the board concludes that Emil can be released on parole effective immediately. But, while the 7 soulmates are cheering, which was also freaking hot, so funny, they say as a condition of his parole, Mr. Blonsky is prohibited from turning into the Abomination indefinitely. And Emil's kind of not happy about that, but whatever, he's still smiling. And he's ordered to wear an inhibitor in perpetuity. So that means for the rest of his life. And any violation of this condition will result in his immediate return to prison. Rami says, imagine if this fourth wall breaking turns out to be some form of cosmic awareness and she's unknowingly communicating with some entity. Oh man, that would be cool. Do you think she's communicating in such a way that the living tribunal can hear her? That could be, because I know that has to do with the Easter egg in that faux commercial that they did. I know that him, the magistrati, cosmic law, that was all definitely forecasted. Rumi says, that's my thought exactly. I tend to agree with you. Who knows? It could be anybody, but I tend to agree with you, especially given what they've been kind of Easter egging, pokers telling, forecasting. This is you've never seen anything like this done in like cinematic history before. This is such a long saga, and everything is so well woven in and interconnected. So if you've seen some of the trailers, he turns back into the Abomination. I don't see any inhibitor collar on his neck. He's wearing like a white t-shirt. He's at some sort of rally at his meditation center or whatever, at his retreat, and he's high-fiving people. So this is gonna be messy, clearly. Again, them saying that he has to wear the inhibitor collar is a bit of a Chekhov's gun. You don't raise that issue and then not have it come into play. So Emil says that he's in Jennifer's debt, spiritually, of course. And Jennifer just asks him to stay out of the news because she doesn't want any stories run about her. And now Emil's joining the movement with Nikki and others saying, listen, he rightly tells her she's going to be part of a story, whether she likes it or not. They're all going to be telling stories about her one way or another. So basically, she really needs to be in control of her own narrative. But as we see so far, she hasn't done that. So now we have a scene change where it's Citizen News, and tonight's discussion is She-Hulk speaks. Who is She-Hulk and who is Jennifer Walters? So the journalist says the Abomination is free, and he's got the attorney on the show responsible for his release. He introduces her as She-Hulk. She's already correcting him, saying, my name is Jennifer Walters, and my client's name is Emil Blonsky, not the Abomination. So this is still her struggling with trying really to maintain her old life as much as possible. We as the audience see that this just isn't playing out, but she's being a hammerhead about it. She just isn't willing to 100% accept it. So then he says the high-profile nature of this case catapulted you into the public eye. So how did you come up with the name She-Hulk? Fair question. So she goes, oh, funny story, I didn't. Some random guy on the news came up with it after thinking about it for like 2 seconds. You can tell she's irritated. But it stuck. And now, whether I like it or not, I am forever She-Hulk. So again, just more direct evidence. The struggle isn't with the powers. It's not with the use of the powers. It's with the identification that she just doesn't like. The journalist then says they'll be back for a break, whereupon She-Hulk will share her diet and exercise routine. And she's like, I'm sorry, what? I think this is a very clever commentary in that when a woman becomes a public figure, or even a limited public figure like She-Hulk, it seems like, okay, like we'll be interested in like the main reason why you became important. But then the next thing everybody seems to want to know, like lockstep maneuver is if you're female, like what's your diet and exercise routine? And she's like, this is in the 1980s. What the hell is this? Is this really all the show asks you what anyone wants to know by default about a female public figure? So then we have a scene change. Jennifer's pulling up to her house. She gets out of her vehicle. She locks it. She's got files in her arms. Totally typical. I've been there. Someone sneaks up behind her and grabs her from behind. They're wearing some sort of helmet that like flames kind of seem to be coming out on it. and someone else is coming up with like a dangle like weapon. It's like purple, filled with purpley kind of swirly energy, which if you understand how energy or magic or powers are coded in the MCU, to me, when it's purple, that's showing it's more magic, like more traditional magic. Like the purple from the Nord dimension with the Jinn, and of course, from Miss Marvel, and also the purple that Agatha Harkness wove when she was weaving her powers. The Scarlet Witch in WandaVision, when she was using her powers, it was red, but that's because her magic comes from chaos magic, which is a little bit different. So I guess these guys are using weapons that are more magical in nature, like Agatha Harkness flavored magic. So Jennifer's struggling and she's acting all frightened, and then all of a sudden she's like, oh wait. And then she turns into She-Hulk. It's like she forgot she has this out. So then they yell at her as she's throwing everybody off of her. If you're going to strut around showing off your powers, you better be able to back it up. And she's like, why does everyone think I'm strutting around showing off my powers? More guys are showing up. They've got this purple energy based weaponry. They're showing off all of their cool weapons. And she's just staring at them, watching them, kind of like Moon Knight did in that scene where everyone had knives and swords. And he's like, okay, are we going to dance? Are we going to fight? Like, what's going on? They're all trying to intimidate her, and she could care less. She snipes, did you guys rob an Asgardian construction worker? And they said they did. So then she's like, all right, let's do this. So they fight. She knocks everybody off of them. One of them tried to inject her with something. We find out later as they all retreat and go into their getaway car. One of them asks the other one, he called him Thunderball. Thunderball, did you get her? And he said, no. When she turned green, her skin was too thick. I couldn't get the injection in her. So I don't know if they were trying to knock her out to take her somewhere. We don't know. This is a big open loop. And meanwhile, She-Hulk gathers her things and she stares at her reflection in the windows of the tinted windows of a red car, because it's nighttime. So she's only going to get a reflection off that. And you can just tell she's just like, this is me, and she's not thrilled. She's not happy about this. So then we get the end credits, and they do change some things from episode to episode as the credits are rolling. So we see, and I totally could have predicted this, Emil Blonsky is being taken off Super Max grounds by a bus, like the release transfer bus. And his 7 soulmates are left in the dust, and they're all crying and reaching out to him. And he's just like, bye, he doesn't care. So he's no good guy for sure. Okay, episode 2, they tried to make him a sympathetic character. I'm not saying any of that stuff doesn't play in, but he's complicated as most of us are. And he's just like, nope, thanks for the property, ladies, bye. And thanks for all the money you probably put in an account for me, bye. And then we also get a separate new image as the credits roll of Dennis, and he's out to frickin' dinner with frickin' Megan Thee Stallion in real life. She's also credited specifically as appearing in the show. So just in case you weren't clear, this isn't some doppelganger double. It's her. Rami says, I was still expecting Blonsky to do a heel turn and object to the inhibitor, but we saw people swooning over Abomination, so all is possible. You know what? I understand why you thought he might object to it, Rami. I think he didn't because he just wanted to get the heck out of Dodge. So it's like, yeah, whatever you say. And then later on, he's just going to do whatever he wants. And that credit scene is showing you so that you're not really shocked. I'll say whatever I have to say to the pen pals until I get what I want, and then bye-bye. I will say whatever it is I'm going to say to the parole board so I can get off the property and get out of the Supermax, and then bye-bye. I've got my property, I've got my money, I've got my fresh start. I bet you, I'm just going to predict this now, guys, that when we see Emil the next time and he's got his retreat all set up and he's doing his pep rally and his coaching sessions, given everything I've seen so far, he may like being like a life coachy kind of guy and have fun with it. But I also think that, he's just being a skunk and he's happy to take money from people, which is often like a stereotype of people who do life coaching or coaching of any kind. They're just glad handing you and taking your money. I'm sure there are some people like that, and there are others who are not. What else? Oh, so we get to the post-credit scene, or the singer, whatever, the stinger. And She-Hulk walks into her office and says, "Hi, there's my new favorite client." And Megan Thee Stallion is signing what I'm going to imagine is a retainer agreement, right? They have to sign that, initial it in a bunch of places before the representation starts. So I don't know what kind of case she's representing Megan on. I don't know if this is something they're going to go back and unpack later, or is it just a funny scene? Holden Holloway comes by to see both the She-Hulk and Megan, because most of the walls of her office are glass. He sees them dancing around in her office with her music playing in the background. And like any much older partner, he's probably glad that the client likes her and that they're socializing. But he's like, I'm old and I don't get any of this, so he leaves. Especially because She-Hulk and Megan have now both begun to twerk. And Megan exclaims gleefully, "Oh, you are way more fun than my last lawyer." To which Jennifer says, "I will kill for you, Megan Thee Stallion." And Megan's like, "Dial it back." So, a lot of this just feels like, because I was a young lawyer once too. And like I said, last week's live, I want to say, I had stuff in my office, my comic book stuff. I had Pikachu in my office. And, you might actually see the little bit of yellow tucked down below. That was one of the Pikachus that I had in my office. And so people would come in if they liked Pikachu, or their kids did, or they liked comics or their kids did. We would talk, and I would often have people say, "You're more fun than I thought." Like, people often forget lawyers are human beings too. They want to have fun. If there's good chemistry, they could become very good friendly with you. And then once the case is over, if you no longer need them, they can be friends with you outside of the case too. I've met quite a few people who I became friendly with through the years. And true story, I'll wrap up with this. I represented somebody in a case. It was a personal injury case. Her case, she was a sweetheart, so we both really had fun. When her case was over, I was sad to see her go, because usually, even if you're super friendly with clients, once the case is over, they go back to their lives, and that's that. So I never thought I'd hear from this lady again. While waiting at a red light, I got hit by a hit and run driver. And I went to call the police because I got the license plate. And I recognized her voice when I called in. She was a dispatcher for that particular municipality. And she's like, "Stacy?" I'm like, "Oh my God, just take this number down before I forget and we'll talk later." And she was like, "Oh, don't worry. There was an unmarked car that saw the guy hit you. So cops already pulled her over." And we just started to talk like it was no big deal. Then my back hurt me later. But anyway, and I was on my way to court in Supreme Court, Rockland County, when this happened. So it was so funny. But like, you can become friends or friendly with clients very easily if you're not stuck up, is my whole thing. So like I said last week, having comics and or Pikachus in my office was my litmus test. Are you a fun person? I'm a fun person. Everything doesn't have to be all like starchy. And because, being a lawyer is a very stressful job, and it is a real statistic, according to, I believe, the American Bar. No, not the American Bar Association. They do have their own statistics, but there was this more generalized study that was done. I quote it in one of my videos where I say that only 7% of lawyers are happy with their careers. That means 93% are not happy. I made the best of it while I was actively out in the court system. I do virtual work only now, so I can otherwise live my own life, do things like this, be around for my kid. But, anything is what you make of it, right? So a lot of attorneys are very stuck up and starched. I think Holden Holloway, he's a partner. He has a reputation to protect. He is at least one generation, if not two, older than She-Hulk. / Jennifer Walters. But the look on his face was priceless, because he's like, "I guess I'm happy this is going on, but I'm out of here." I've had partners walk into my office and go, "Oh, okay," and then they leave. So I like it. Overall, I like what they did on the criminal side, even though I'm not a criminal attorney. I never been, but from what I know from other people, I love how Jennifer thought on her feet to spin a tragedy into triumph. And I love what happened in the civil trial. Other than the fact that you were dealing with a superhuman on one side of the equation, that was about as pitch perfect as you could ask for. So if you missed any part of this live, make sure that you go back and watch it from the beginning. I break down all sorts of stuff in terms of courtroom procedure to courtroom substance, and how I think this so far is really a very excellent series. If you have any questions or you want to discuss this matter further, you can definitely leave comments down below. I wish my comments during the live would show up during the replay. I checked the box for it, it doesn't. So I really wish that YouTube would fix that. But if you're watching on the replay, I'm going to post the playlist for all of my She-Hulk live stream reactions / replays and edited videos. I've loved She-Hulk for decades. I know her very, very well. So I'm definitely a Marvel theorist worth getting to know more. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.